so to start out with, you're going to go ahead and get your potatoes ready because we're going to need to do this in the morning because this is going to be a soup that we're going to be able to put in our crock pot and just let it cook all day long so we don't have to worry about it. And it's, a couple of tiny steps at the end of the day and your dinner is done. So go ahead and get your potatoes all peeled up. And I always feel like I need to put this disclaimer out there. If you are not comfortable peeling your potatoes with a knife, holding them in your hand, then please don't do it. Use your potato peeler or however it is that you can safely peel your potatoes. Because I would hate for y'all to do this because you think this is how you have to do it and then you cut a finger off and then I feel terrible. So anyway, just peel your potatoes, y'all. And you're going to need about 4 medium-sized potatoes or 3 little ones and a big old humongous one like I did. So then once we get our potatoes all good and washed up and get all that dirt off of them, we're going to go ahead and get them diced up. Now, you don't want to dice them too small because we are going to let this cook all day long, and you don't want your potatoes to just kind of disintegrate into nothing, but you also don't want them so big that, they're way bigger than a bite. You know what I mean? You want them to be bite size. So about the size you see me cutting them up is what, will work just fine. My potatoes held together just fine, y'all. So once you get your taters all cut up, put those in your crock pot, and then you're going to cut up 1 onion and put that in your crock pot too. Now, I wish I would have had a bigger onion, but y'all know the debacle I had with them tiny onions I got. So let's not bring those bad memories back up. I'm going to get my own onions tomorrow, y'all. So anyway, go ahead, potatoes, onions in your crock pot. So now we're going to add in 1 container, 32-ounce container, or 4 cups of chicken broth. Now, I normally have chicken broth, like homemade chicken broth, and I do have some in the freezer, but I didn't think ahead and take it out. So I'm using a box. It's just fine. Use what you have. I'm also using low sodium. Use what you have. But if you don't have low sodium, just make sure you kind of watch the amount of salt that you put in there because you don't want it to be too salty. Okay, so now we're going to season it up a little bit. Now I'm adding some onion powder and some garlic powder, and then I'm going to add in some of this Kinder's caramelized onion butter. Now, I love the caramelized onion burger flavor, but I haven't been able to find it lately. I'm going to Sam's tomorrow, though, and I'm hoping they have it. So then I added a little salt and pepper. But what I'm doing is I'm seasoning this soup the same way that I would season a hamburger. So if you were going to be making burgers on the grill or burgers on the stove or whatever, that's the seasonings you want to put in this soup because it's a cheeseburger soup. So you want it to taste like what your cheeseburger would taste like, right? Doesn't that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So season it with whatever seasonings you like. Then we're going to put I'm going to put my insert down in the other part of the crock pot. But we're going to turn our crock pot on. Of course, put the lid on it. Turn it on. Look, plug it in. Don't ask me how I know you need to plug it in because y'all are... Okay, let's not talk about that. Let's move on. Okay, so anyway, crock pot on, lid on, low 6 to 8 hours. Or if you don't have that much time, high for 4 to 5, okay? So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so now we need some bacon because we're making bacon cheeseburger soup, right? So the way that I'm going to cook my bacon today is I'm going to put this aluminum foil, tin foil, whatever y'all want to call it, on my cookie sheet or my bacon sheet or whatever you want to call that. And then I'm going to put on as many pieces of bacon that will fit. And I think I fit 8 on there. And I'm going to put this in the oven, 400 degrees, and I cook mine for about 15 minutes because I like mine crispy. Cook it however long you like, the way that you like your bacon. If you like it less crispy, cook it less time. But it's super easy. Once it's done, you take it out and you throw the tinfoil away and, you're done. It's easy cleanup. So anyway, while our bacon's cooking, we're going to go ahead and get our ground beef browned up. Now, this is at the end of the day, y'all. So we let our potatoes and onions cook all day, and about an hour before you're going to eat, you're going to want to do this part. Now, if you're not going to have time when you get home in the evening to do this, then do this in the morning, throw it in with your potatoes, and I'm sure it'll all be just fine if you let it cook all day. It'll be fine, I'm sure. So anyway, cook your ground beef up, and then we're going to drain the grease off, but you're going to need this pan. So once you put your meat over there to drain, leave it over there, wipe your pan out, and then drop in 3 tablespoons of butter, because we're going to make a little cream sauce to put in our soup to make it creamy. So melt you 3 tablespoons of butter. Once your butter is melted, you're going to add in there 3 tablespoons. Look, I got stuff popping everywhere. 3 tablespoons of flour, just regular all-purpose flour. We're making a roux, y'all. So if you know how to make a roux, that's what we're doing. And if you don't know how to make a roux, this is how you do it. So everybody, you can learn something today if you didn't know. So go ahead, like I said, melt your butter, 3 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of flour. Now, we're not making a gumbo, so this don't need to cook forever and get super dark brown. We're just making a sauce, and we don't need it dark. So let that cook for about 2 to 3 minutes, okay? Then we're going to slowly whisk in, and y'all, don't even say it. I already know, I've known for a year since I've been on YouTube that I need a bigger whisk. And I still forget to buy it every time I go to the store. One of these days, y'all. One of these days, but not today. So slowly add in 2 cups of milk. Now, I didn't have milk. All I had was heavy whipping cream, shockingly. So that's what I used. But you can use milk or heavy whipping cream. Either one will work just fine. You're just going to let that come to a boil. You see how it was bubbling? And that's all you need to do, because we're going to put it in this pot and it'll be just fine. We're just using it to kind of thicken it up. So now we're going to go ahead and add our ground beef in, and then we're going to add in that cream sauce that we made, okay? Because it's getting close to time to eat, y'all, so we got to finish this off, okay? So add in your cream sauce right in the top. See there? It's not super thick, it's not as thick as what a gravy would be. It's still a little bit thin, but you see how thin our soup is right now? Watch in a few minutes, you'll see it's going to get thick. She going to get thick, y'all. So just wait. Just hang on. I know you're on the edge of your seat. So just stir that up, and make sure too, y'all, that you're tasting this along the way. If you need to add a little more seasoning, add some more seasoning. Whatever you need to do seasoning-wise. Just keep a check on that. So then I'm just going to pop the lid on and stick this over to the side, because now my bacon is ready and I need to get it chopped up to add to the pot, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and chop up my bacon. Now, I know y'all see how red my arm is. No, I'm not sunburned. You know what that is? Hot flash. I'm old and I'm falling apart, y'all. Anybody else? Let me know down in the comments. Anybody else just sweat 24 hours a day for no reason? No, just me? Okay, moving on. All right, now that your bacon is all nice and chopped up, go ahead and throw that over into your crock pot. And you see our soup is already starting to thicken up a little bit. See how it's gotten a little bit thicker since we added in that cream sauce? Okay, so now we're going to add the final step. We're going to add in about 2 cups of shredded cheese. Now, I'm using shredded Colby Jack, because that's what I had. If you have Fiesta blend, if you have plain cheddar, whatever you have will work just fine. Whatever you like to put on your burger, okay? If you put mozzarella on your burger, I don't know. I feel like cheddar is kind of always the answer when you do something like this, but do you, whatever kind of cheese you like, throw it in there. You need 2 cups of it. Put the lid on, let it cook for about another 30-45 minutes, okay? Still on low now. We're still on low. And that's it, y'all. Look at this soup. Oh my goodness. Look how thick she got. Look how thick she got, y'all. She is thick. But y'all, this soup is so dang good. Even people in my house, not, but in my life that don't like soup, love this soup. So you have got to give it a try. So to start out with, you're going to need 2 stalks of celery, 1 medium onion, and about 3 medium-sized carrots. Now, I didn't have all of my carrots were not medium-sized, so I just went ahead and grabbed, what I thought would be about the equivalent of 3 medium-sized carrots. So one of y'all taught me that little trick with the paper towel. If you have one of these cutting boards that likes to slide all over the counter, just wet a paper towel and put it down under your cutting board, and your cutting board won't go anywhere. Y'all, that's the easiest thing. I wish I could remember which one of y'all said it, but you know who you are, and just know that it is much appreciated that I am not chasing this cutting board all over the counter. So you're going to go ahead and just cut your celery up into bite-sized pieces. And I like to cut mine like down the middle and then, you know, and then chop it, because I don't like huge hunks of celery in my soup. And I also don't like huge hunks of carrots in my soup. So I went ahead and peeled my carrots up, and I'm just cutting. Y'all, I can't talk. I'm cutting off the ends, and then I'm just gonna slice these pretty thin. And the bigger ones, I should have probably cut those, you know, in half long ways and then cut them, but it still turned out fine. So you're gonna try to chop these into small or at least thin little pieces of carrot, and that way they'll cook down, you know, in the same time that it takes your other vegetables to cook down. And then we're just gonna go ahead and dice up this onion. And if you want more onion, you could absolutely use more. I mean, y'all know I love my onion, and I really could have gone for a little more onion, but this is what we did. So once your vegetables are all diced up and ready to go, you're gonna add a little bit of olive oil to your Dutch oven or whatever pan you're cooking your soup in. And then you're just gonna add all your vegetables right over into your pan. And we're gonna go ahead and cook these for about 10 or 15 minutes until they get kind of soft. About halfway through, I went ahead and added in about a tablespoon of minced garlic. Now, you can certainly use fresh garlic, or if you don't have fresh or minced, you can use a little garlic powder if you want to. So I just cooked this around for another few minutes until, you know, my garlic was cooked in there a little bit. And then once you get your vegetables where you want them, you go ahead and add 2 of these 32-ounce containers of chicken broth. Now, I like to use the low sodium when I can, you know, get my hands on it, because that way I can kind of control the amount of salt that goes into things. And if you use the full salt, you know, you're going to get whatever you get. But if you use the lower sodium, then you can kind of adjust the salt, you know, more to your taste. So anyway, that's my reasoning behind that, y'all. So go ahead and add your broth in, and then I added just a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and about a teaspoon or so of Italian seasoning, and just mix that around. And then we're gonna add in our chicken. Now, I used some chicken that I had cooked a few days before. I cooked it in my crock pot. I just like to trim and season up a whole bunch of chicken breasts, and I just let them cook for a few hours in the crock pot, and then they just shred up easy. And then I put them in containers and freeze them, and that way I have shredded chicken, you know, whenever I need it. I don't necessarily have to, you know, cook my chicken. So that's why there wasn't a lot of seasoning added to this soup, because my chicken, I had already seasoned it up, you know, with salt, pepper, garlic, onion, and all that. And I didn't want to overdo it. So go ahead and just add your chicken. And like I said, you can do a rotisserie chicken. You can do, if you don't like the shredded chicken, you could chop, you know, cut yours up into cubes and cook it that way and add it. However you want your chicken, it'll be fine. So you're just gonna add your chicken, let it come to a boil. Once it starts boiling good, you're gonna pour in 2 cups of egg noodles. And I think these are just like wide egg noodles. So just a couple of cups. You don't need the whole bag, or you would have, you know, way more noodle than soup. So you're just gonna cook this, and I think it took maybe about 8 minutes or so to get my noodles cooked. And that's it, y'all. This soup is so easy. Like, the whole thing, start to finish, you can get done in like 30 minutes. Now, if you wanted to cook it a little bit longer, you certainly could, but I would recommend just cooking it without the noodles if you want to cook it a little longer, because if you overcook those noodles, you're going to end up with just a whole bunch of mushy noodles. So that's it, y'all. That's all there is to this homemade chicken noodle soup, and it is so good. And of course, well, most of y'all know that it's just me here because my kids are grown and out on their own. So when I make something like this, I like to take these containers and like portion it out, and then I can put those in the freezer. And then whenever I want chicken noodle soup, I don't have to go through, you know, the whole cooking it all. I can just pull it out of the freezer and eat it. And of course, y'all know I made me a bowl to eat that day. So this is our yummy homemade chicken noodle soup, y'all. It is so good. It is perfect for a rainy day, or maybe you don't feel too well and you just want the comfort of some chicken noodle soup. This soup is perfect for that. Hey y'all, today we're making some creamy tomato soup and some sourdough grilled cheese. Now honey, this is the Starbucks copycat grilled cheese that we're going to make it, and we're going to make it on our homemade sourdough bread that I made in the last video, and I will link that one for you. So we're going to go ahead and start making our soup. You're going to go ahead and chop up one yellow onion and just chop it up kind of big because we're going to cook it down and then we're going to put it in the blender, okay? So you don't have to have it small. So we're going to add to our Dutch oven or whatever soup pot you're using 2 tablespoons of butter and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil or whatever oil you have. You know, I'm a firm believer in use what you got. Oil and butter, that's what you need. Then we're going to drop our onion over in there and we're going to cook this for about 5 minutes or so until your onion is cooked down, you know, till it's clear, till it's translucent, wonderful, cooked, soft, you know, you can see. So, and don't worry about the stuff on the bottom, that's the good stuff. We're going to get that up, we'll mix that into the soup as we make it. So once you get your onion all, you know, done like you want it, we're going to take a bunch of fresh parsley and we're going to go ahead, we're going to need about a half a cup of this. So I just washed it up real good and then I'm just going to kind of rough chop it. It doesn't have to be perfect or precise or anything like that because again, we're going to throw this over into the blender, but you want to kind of get it into a little bit more manageable pieces because you don't want to accidentally end up with a tree, you know, in your soup. So just get that all good and chopped up, and then we're going to measure out, like I said, about a half a cup of that, and then whatever you have left over you can use for garnish or use it in another recipe, or really for the amount that was left on there I could have just shoved it all in there. Okay, so now we're going to need a blender. You're going to take your little blender, and y'all, I didn't even know I had a blender. Did not know I owned one. I've never used it. Or maybe I used it 100 years ago because the thing is about 1,000 years old. But anyway, I'm glad I found it down in the cabinet. So, you know, don't be hard on my poor little cheap blender because who knows from whence it came, because I sure don't. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump our onions over in there. And then we're going to add 2 cans of crushed tomatoes. Now, you can use whatever kind of crushed tomatoes you want. This is just what the store had, so that's what I got. And you're going to need a total of 5 cans of crushed tomatoes. Okay, so in this first little batch, because we're going to have to do this in 2 batches because the blender's not big enough to do it all at one time. So I went ahead and I put my onions in, and then I put 2 cans of the crushed tomatoes, and then I went ahead and put the parsley over in there. Then we're just going to go ahead and we're going to blend this up, and yes, I realize I put the top on backwards, but it didn't make any difference. So anyway, y'all, blend this up until it's nice and creamy, and you see it'll turn an orangey looking color, you know, because of the tomato, Lord of mercy, the onions and stuff that we put in there. So you're just going to get that good and mixed up till it's nice and smooth. And this is, I was giving it a sniff, y'all, but this is what it's going to look like right there, okay? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump that right down into our pot. And like I said, this is kind of cool, so when you put it in there, you can go ahead and scrape up all them little bits off the bottom to get all that good flavor. So we're going to go ahead, add that, put it over on the stove, start, you know, we'll start heating her up. And then we're going to take 2 more cans of crushed tomatoes and put those in our blender and blend those up. Now, I saved the last can of crushed tomatoes and just added those in there just like they were because I wanted a little bit of texture to my soup. But if you want yours completely smooth, you can put all 3 cans in the blender and, you know, completely, you know, blend them up and get them smooth. So that's just kind of your choice, just preference, however you want yours. But I will say, even with the can of crushed tomatoes just added in at the end, this was still a very smooth soup, you know, because crushed tomatoes are not that big. So, you know, just do what works for you, do whatever you feel or whatever you're thinking about at the moment. So we're just going to add the second batch of crushed tomatoes right over into our pot, and we're going to stir this up real good because we're going to need to get this, you know, kind of bring it to a boil in a minute, and then we're going to, you know, let it simmer. And that way it'll just get all them flavors good and mixed together because, you know, you can't just cook soup and be done with it in 5 minutes. All right, so there's our last can. So that's can number 5 of the crushed tomatoes. Now, if you wanted to use a couple of big cans, you could probably do that. But like I said, this is what the store had when I went to get them. So this is just what I got. So you're gonna go ahead and just get that good and mixed up, and then let's give it a little seasoning, okay? So y'all already know garlic powder, and I'm gonna dump the whole kitchen up in here of this garlic powder. Honey, I put 40 pounds of it in there, but you know, you gotta have some flavor in your soup. You gotta have, because that's a lot of tomato. So you gotta kind of kill the tomato taste. If that's, I know it's tomato soup and it's supposed to taste like tomatoes, but you know what I'm saying. You don't want it to be overpoweringly just tomato in your face. You want it to be, you know, you want it to just taste like something besides just a raw tomato. Does that make any sense? I think I'm just talking and talking. But anyway, y'all get what I'm saying. Onion, garlic, salt, and pepper. Mix it up good. And make sure, like I always say, taste your doggone food. Taste it. Don't let it cook all day long and not taste it. Okay? Taste it in between and see if you need to add more stuff. Okay, once you get your seasonings added in, go ahead and add one of these little small containers of heavy whipping cream. Okay, because like I said, this is going to be a creamy tomato soup, almost like a tomato bisque. But anyway, it's a creamy tomato soup. That's what we're going to go with. So you're going to mix your cream in there, mix it up really good, and then I tasted it, and I decided it needed some Tonys. So I went back and added some Tonys. And like I said, just taste it along the way. If you feel like you need a little more salt, a little more pepper, if you have a certain seasoning that you like, go ahead and use it. You know, just get it to how you like it. Then we're going to put the lid on, let that simmer. All right, now that sourdough bread I promised y'all from the last video, here it is. Now, you see I cut it uneven, but that's okay, because that's how I do around here. I can't cut even, but it'll work. So what we're going to do, I looked up the recipe for the Starbucks grilled cheese, because me and my daughter had been out shopping, and we had one, and y'all, it was so good. And she was like, Mama, you ought to make some of that grilled cheese on that bread that you've been making. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make that with a tomato soup. So what it calls for is white cheddar cheese and mozzarella. So I didn't really want to use shredded on here because the holes in this bread are kind of small and you're already going to get your cheese to kind of seep through those holes. And I thought trying to do it with shredded cheese might be even worse. I might lose a lot of cheese, if that makes sense. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to melt a little bit of butter, or soften it at least to where we can kind of fool with it, and then you're just going to put you a good layer down on each one of your pieces of sourdough bread. Then we're going to put that right down on our griddle, and we just going to pile the cheese on, honey. Pile it on. Because, you know, can you really have too much cheese? I mean, I guess you can, but really can you? I don't think so. So all we're going to do, pile the cheese on, put your other piece of bread on, cook it low and slow because the bread is thick, y'all. Oh my gosh. Okay, here's our tomato soup, final product. Y'all, this stuff is so dang good. If you don't just want tomato soup, here's your grilled cheese sandwich. Have you a grilled cheese sandwich if you're not feeling like having soup. But you know what? What goes better than grilled cheese and tomato soup, right? Get you a nice bowl of tomato soup. Make you a yummy grilled cheese sandwich. It is ooey and gooey and buttery and crusty and crunchy, and it's so much better because you made the bread. You made the bread and you made the soup, and it's all homemade, and it's wonderful. Hey y'all, today we're going to be making some vegetable soup, but with hamburger meat instead of stew meat. I've been seeing this on TikTok and all over YouTube and everything, and so I decided I would go ahead and give it a try. I normally like my vegetable beef soup with like stew meat in it, but we're going to go with the hamburger and we're going to see how it works. So first off, of course, we're going to need to cook our ground beef. And instead of chopping up an onion, I had some of this seasoning blend in the freezer, and I went ahead and used that because I like the seasoning blend, you know, because it's got onions and bell peppers and all that kind of stuff in there. And if we're making a big pot of vegetable soup, it's not going to hurt to have a few extra vegetables thrown in the mix. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. And I know it's starting to get warmer outside and everything, but we've got a bunch of rain coming in here in the next couple of days. So I thought a big pot of homemade soup would be perfect for a rainy day. Okay? So we're going to let our meat and our seasoning blend, brown up over there, get it all cooked. So we're going to go ahead and get all of our other stuff ready. And I don't mind using like frozen, like the carrots and peas and things like that when I'm making soup, but I don't really care for like frozen potatoes in my soup or canned potatoes. I just would prefer fresh potatoes in my soup. So I don't know. Are y'all like me? Let me know down in the comments. Are y'all all about the real potato? So anywho, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get these potatoes all peeled up. And I've said this before when I've peeled potatoes in a video. If y'all are not comfortable, peeling your potatoes with a knife and cutting them up in your hand like I do, please don't do it and hurt yourself. But this is just the way we always did it growing up, so that's the way I do it now. It's just quicker to me than, trying to get out a potato peeler. So that's what I do. So once you get your potatoes all peeled up, you're going to wash them up real good. Make sure you get all that dirt off of them. And then go ahead and slice them up. Now, the reason I decided to use the gold potatoes in this, for some reason, and I feel like it should be the opposite, but it's not for me, or at least it wasn't last time I used potatoes. But y'all know it's just me and the cat here, so I'm going to have a lot of soup left over. So I'm going to freeze a lot of this. And I find that if I use a russet potato, they get a little mealy when you freeze them. But I don't have that problem when I use yellow potatoes. So that's why I went with these. Y'all let me know down in the comments. Do y'all have that issue, or do y'all know why that is? Maybe it's the starch content. I don't know. So anyway, we're going to get our potatoes all chopped up. Now, I've gotten my meat all browned up, and I went ahead and drained, the little bit of grease that was in there. I went ahead and drained that off. And now we're going to go ahead and start adding everything in. So this is one large can. I think it's 32 ounce, y'all. Y'all know I'm crazy. I don't never know. But a 32 ounce can of crushed tomatoes. And then you're going to need a big can, like the same size large can of like, what's it called? Tomato sauce, y'all. Lord, I can't think. But I didn't have any, but I had this big old can of tomato soup because I was using it, going to use it for something else. But I had it, so I just went ahead and dumped it over in there. Now, it doesn't make your soup sweet. And I do find that I do a little bit better acid-wise. I got the acid reflux because I'm old. But when I use tomato soup in something like this, for some reason, it doesn't bother me as bad as just straight tomato sauce. So I may actually start using this from now on. Maybe it was a happy accident. But anyway, then I went ahead and added my potatoes in, and I started out with one bag, and I think these are like a 10 ounce bag, maybe a 12 ounce, just like the kind of small regular size bags of frozen vegetables. And I mixed that in. Now, when I have like a homemade soup like this, I like a lot of vegetables in it. And so I mixed it up just to kind of get a feel for, if I wanted to use a second bag or not. And I decided I did. So here we go. There's another bag. And this has got like carrots, peas, corn, and green beans in it. If you like a different kind of vegetable blend, you can certainly use something different if you want to. But this is what I like in my soup. So that's what I went with. So I added 2 of those, just regular size bags of vegetables in there. And I know it looks a little thick, but we're going to fix that. We're going to add a 32 ounce container of beef broth. And if you don't have beef broth, chicken broth will probably work just as well. Use what you got, y'all. So add your container of broth right over in there. And then we're going to give that a real good stir. And then we're going to need to season this. Because I bet y'all are thinking, Lord, she ain't put a bit of seasoning in here yet. But I'm going to. Y'all bear with me. Hang in there. Y'all know it's coming. You know I'm going to season it up. So I'm trying to just kind of get everything mixed in. I like a lot of juice in my soup too. If you don't like yours this juicy, you don't have to add that much. But I like a lot of juice because I like to dip my cornbread in it. So I went ahead and I dumped in a little bit of Italian seasoning. Now, I didn't want to use too much Italian seasoning in here because I didn't want it to taste like a lasagna. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want that flavor in my soup. I wanted the beef flavor more than anything. So I just added a little bit of Italian seasoning, and then I added a good bit of garlic and a good bit of onion because I didn't add any minced garlic. I meant to when I was browning my meat, and I totally forgot. So I just added a little bit of extra garlic powder in there. And then, of course, I'm going to add a little bit of Tony's, because you got to give your soup some flavor. You know what I'm saying? You got to have some flavor in a good old soup. So go ahead and get that mixed in. Now, I added all of that in here before I added my salt and pepper, and y'all don't see it on here, but I'm tasting this along the way because I can't have no flavorless soup now. And you know, soup is one of those things, you cook it the first day and it's delicious, but honey, that second day, that's when it really gets good. So I went ahead and added me in a little bit of salt and a little bit, plus a little bit of pepper to, you know, get it seasoned on up. And then I mixed it in there real good. And then we're just going to let this come to a good boil. And once it comes to a real good boil, you're going to go ahead and just cut it down to a simmer, put the lid on it, and you could cook it just for maybe, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes, something like that, till your potatoes get done. Oh, yeah, y'all, I decided I'd add a little parsley in there, too. Yeah, and y'all know that twisting the lid thing, that really does work. Look at that. Look at that parsley just coming out. But anyway, back to the soup. Back to the boiling part. You're going to bring it to a boil and then cut it down, let it simmer for at least 45 minutes to an hour. You're going to want to let it simmer at least, if you don't have a lot of time, at least until your potatoes are cooked, okay? I like to cook mine longer. I'll let that sucker sit on the stove and simmer for hours, because the longer you cook it, to me, the longer you cook it, the better it tastes. You can even do this, you know, like brown your meat and stuff and put this over in your crock pot and just let it cook on low all day, and that would be fantastic. So either way you want to do it will be perfectly fine. And then I just made me a big old pan of cornbread, and honey, I have the best cornbread recipe in the world. I will put a link to that down in the description box below so y'all can check that out. But this is what our soup looked like, y'all. It was so doggone good and so full of flavor. And like I said, you just dip that cornbread right over in there. Honey, it don't get no better than this. Hey y'all, today we're going to make some super delicious and very, very easy French onion soup. So to start out with, we're going to need to chop up a whole lot of onions. Now what I used for this was just a regular old 3-pound bag of onions. So however you buy your onions, get as close to 3 pounds as you can get for the amount of soup that I'm making. All right, let's chop these onions up.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care in the world. I was one rich little girl, daydreamer, kidnap me, take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
Okay, so you see that I just peeled these, chopped them in half, and then just cut them into slices. And let me tell y'all, this amount of onions, you see I just completely missed the bowl. I was crying hard at this point. Y'all, that's a lot of onion to cut up. So put your onion goggles on or whatever you need to do, because you're going to be chopping lots of onions. Okay, so to my Dutch oven, I added 3 tablespoons of butter. And we're going to go ahead and let that melt. Once it gets melted, go ahead and add in about a tablespoon of oil. I just use some olive oil, but use whatever you have. You know, use whatever you have. And then I added about a half of a teaspoon of sugar. Now, a lot of people are like, you know, like I said, I was crying when I was cutting these onions up because they were very, very strong. But we're going to cook these onions so long that you're going to cook that right out of them. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get the flavor without that heavy, overpowering bite of onion, if that makes sense. And then the sugar, of course, just helps it along the way to get a little bit sweeter. Now, it's not going to be super, super sweet, so don't freak out about that. So you're going to cook these onions kind of on a medium heat. I cooked these for about 45 minutes to an hour. Normally what I would do is cook them until they're that nice brown color, but y'all, I was hungry. And they were pretty well done. And there was a lot of onions in this small pot, so I didn't want to, cook them to mush, but you can definitely cook them until they're brown. Okay, once you get your onions nice and soft, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of flour and then some salt and pepper, and you're just going to add the salt and pepper to taste. So however much, you like. You don't add too much because you're going to put some other salty things in here, the broth and everything, and you don't want to over salt it. You can always taste it. So you're going to let that cook around for about a minute or two just to get that raw flour cooked out. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and add in about 6 cups of beef broth. And I had one container that was about half full, so I used that, and then I used this full container because these containers like this, if y'all, if you didn't know, they're 4 cups. So if you get these big containers, you just need 1.5 of those for this amount of soup, okay? Now, for me, for the people I was feeding, this made about 6 servings. So just do the math on that. If you have a much bigger family, you're going to want to make more of this, maybe double it even, but please use a bigger pot. Just use a bigger pot because that's a lot of onion. Okay, once you get your beef broth mixed in, go ahead and drop in 1 bay leaf, and then I added a couple of tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, maybe a tablespoon or 2. Now, normally when you cook French onion soup, you add some wine or some sort of like red wine vinegar or something. But that's one of the reasons I chose this recipe, because I don't normally have that at my house, and I wanted to be able to make it to where everybody could eat it, and the ingredients were very simple. So once you get your bay leaf added in, you're going to bring it to a boil. Once it starts boiling, cut it down and just let it simmer for about an hour. All right, so I went the fancy route and got me some Gruyere cheese, but you can definitely use mozzarella for this. If you've never had this kind of cheese, it's sort of like a cross, to me. The taste of it is sort of between a mozzarella and a Parmesan. So if you don't have this cheese, just use a little Parm and a little mozzarella. It'll be perfect. And I just shredded that up. So go ahead now and this is one of those little, kind of a skinny baguette. And I just went ahead and I cut it into slices, probably about a half an inch thick or so. And this is what's going to go on top of your soup, okay? So go ahead and put your oven on broil high. And then you're going to cut your little bread up. And then I just didn't want to, clean this pan later. So I lined it with some foil, y'all. And I put my little bread down on there. And then I just took a little bit of olive oil, and I just rubbed a little bit of olive oil on the top just so we can get them nice and toasty brown in the oven. Okay, now if you don't have oil or you don't want to use oil, you could use a little bit of butter, however you want to do it. It will work just fine. But you're going to pop those under the broiler. A lot of people say put it under the broiler for 2 or 3 minutes. Honey, if I put something under my broiler for 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to have a fire in the kitchen. My broiler cooks very hot, so it took mine probably 30-45 seconds to get to that point. So when you put them, anytime you're broiling something in your oven and you're not sure how your broiler works, err on the side of caution and watch it the whole time it's cooking. Okay, once our time has, passed, our hour or whatever, go ahead, make sure you remove the bay leaf from your soup because nobody wants to chomp into a bay leaf. So just take that out of your soup, and then I'm just reusing that same pan I cooked the bread on, and I'm using these little, I don't think they're called ramekins. Maybe they are, because I'm not sure if that with the handle is, I don't know, whatever it is, a little soup bowl, y'all. My sister gave me those, and they're so pretty, and I hadn't had a chance to use them yet, so I was so excited I was making this recipe so I could use these finally. So what you're going to do is whatever bowl you're using, and make sure that your bowl, whatever you use, is oven safe up to like 500 degrees because we're broiling this. So you want to make sure whatever you're using for your soup can withstand high heat in your oven, okay? So I can't tell you what that, what kind of material that is that you need, but just make sure that your bowls are rated for some high temp, okay? Then you're going to put a little piece of bread right on top of your soup. And then I was trying to just fill it in because, like I said, this was a small piece of bread. So I just kind of broke one of the little pieces in half just to make it cover the whole little surface area of my soup. And once you get your bread added, you're going to go ahead and take some of that cheese, and we're going to just sprinkle that right over the top. Does not have to be neat. Now, I did pick up the ones that fell because I didn't want them to burn, but just put you a big old pile on there, and then we're going to pop this under the broiler until our cheese is nice and melted. See that, y'all? And look, don't use cheap pans like I did. I had to double them up, and then they still did that little warp thing. You know how they do when they get too hot? Look, I'm going to start a GoFundMe for some pans, y'all. I'm just kidding. But anyway, y'all, this is our French onion soup. This is my favorite soup in the world, but I never eat it because all the ingredients are always so strange and it's not stuff that I normally have. So I found this recipe and I did it for y'all. So make this soup because it turned out fantastic. Hey y'all, today we're going to be making some yummy stuffed bell pepper soup. So to get started, of course, we're going to need some bell peppers. So I had this bag of bell peppers. I'd gotten a big pack of bell peppers at Sam's. So I diced those up, kind of meal prepping, just getting some things done because who's going to eat that many bell peppers in one sitting, right? So I just cut them up and then I put them over in the freezer and I just pull them out when I need them, like today. And then I also had this one little lonely green bell pepper in the refrigerator that it looked like it was on its last leg. So I said, well, let me go ahead and cut that up and I'll throw that in there too. And of course, the more color you add, the prettier your soup is, right? So that's what I ended up doing. So I just went ahead and I chopped up this green bell pepper. Just, take the seeds out, take the little veins out, whatever you call, what are they called? The little ribs. You know what I'm saying? Take those out because they're a little bit bitter sometimes. And then just dice them up. And then I went ahead and I diced up an onion. Now, if you don't like a ton of onion, you can do half of an onion if you want to. But this makes a pretty big, pot of soup. And onion is always good in soup. So just dice your onion up just like you did your bell pepper. And then we're going to get started cooking this, y'all. So to your soup pot or Dutch oven or whatever you have, add a couple of tablespoons of olive oil or whatever oil you have. I always say use whatever you've got. And then we're going to add in our onions and our bell peppers. And I always like to put my onions and bell peppers in. Well, a lot of times I'll put them in, before I put my meat in and just kind of give them a little bit of a head start. Because to me, I like mine really soft. And if I cook them at the same time as my meat, my meat is done way before my vegetables are. So I decided I would start with my onions and my bell peppers, and I just gave them, maybe just 2 minutes I cooked them, just a couple minutes. And then I just put a little tiny bit of salt in there because that'll help the onions sweat, You know what I'm saying? Pull that liquid out of there. Get them all cooked up nice and neat. So then I had this little bit of hamburger meat left over in this Ziploc bag. I had used the rest of it for something else. And normally I would have used a little bit more hamburger meat than this. This is not quite a pound, but this is what I had, so that's what I used. But just use about a pound of whatever meat that you're using. You could do ground turkey, you could do sausage, whatever you like to put in your stuffed bell peppers, that's what we're going to put in this soup. So you're going to cook that until it's all nice and, the meat is browned and your vegetables are soft, and then drain all that grease out of there. So once you get your grease drained out, you're going to go ahead and add 1 can, and this is a 15-ounce can of diced tomatoes. And then we're going to add 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. And like I said, we're putting in this soup what you would put in a stuffed bell pepper, or at least what I put in my stuffed bell peppers. And I will link that video for y'all in case you want to check that out if you want to make some regular stuffed bell peppers if you're not a soup person. So once you get your tomatoes and your tomato sauce put in there, you're just going to mix that up really good. And then we're going to add 4 cups of beef broth. And then this is just one of those 32-ounce containers. So if you have one of those, dump the whole container in there. If, you're just, using bouillon cubes and water, or if you're using, cans or whatever, about 4 cups. Now, if you don't like this much liquid in your soup, then you don't have to add quite as much. Or if you like more, like the juice in your soup, then you can add a little bit more if that's the way you want to do it. Just do it how you and your family like it. So now we're going to season it up a little bit. And again, this is what I put in my stuffed bell peppers, but feel free to put whatever seasonings you like. I put a little bit of Italian seasoning, a little bit of onion powder, and then I added a little bit of garlic powder in my big old humongous Sam's container of garlic powder that I will still go through in no time at all because I put it on everything. So you're going to get that added right on in there. And like I said, if you don't like onion, garlic, whatever, you don't have to put it in there. You can just put salt and pepper if that's what you like. And then, of course, I added a little bit of Tony's in here because, you know, I like my bell pepper soup, or any kind of soup for that matter. I like it to have some flavor, y'all, because, you know, sometimes if you add a bunch of broth to stuff, it kind of, I don't know, like you need to add a lot of seasoning. I feel like the more liquid you have, the more seasoning you need. You know what I'm saying? So then I added also in a little bit of salt and pepper, and then just mix that around real good till you get, you know, all your little stuff mixed in. And then we are going to let this cook. And Lord, I had some little onions stuck on the side over there. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell y'all, I put a couple of tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce up in here too. Because why not? I love the flavor of it. So I decided to add it in there. But again, you don't have to add it in there if you don't like it. So just stir it up real good. And then we're going to let it come to a boil. And we're going to put the lid on it. And we're going to let it simmer for, I don't know, as long as you want to let it simmer. I did mine probably for about an hour. And then I had already cooked some rice, just some regular old long grain white rice. And I had it sitting over to the side because we're going to add that in at the end. If you add it in too early, your rice will get real mushy in there. So, you know, just don't add it too early, and make sure your rice is cooked, you know, when you add it in there. So I just went ahead and added, I don't know, a couple of cups of rice. Now you can add as little or as much as you like. If you like a whole lot of rice, like if you want it to be thicker, then you can add more rice if you want to. But if you don't like as much rice, then you don't have to add as much in there. Okay, you see what I'm saying? You just make it however you want to make it. Now, I put this much in here, and then I think I added just a tiny bit more because I had made a little bit more than, you know, what I had originally thought, because I thought, well, I'll put it in the refrigerator and eat it later if I want to. But I ended up just adding it all in there, and look at that, y'all. Isn't that just so pretty? It is so pretty. So you're going to want to let this simmer for a little bit because you want that rice to soak up some of the flavor of that soup. You just don't want to overcook it. I probably let it simmer for about 30 minutes, and that was it. That's all you need. So this is our soup, y'all. Look how good this looks. And I'm telling you, if you like stuffed bell peppers, you're going to love this soup. It is so dang good. Tastes just like a stuffed bell pepper, except it's a little juicier, of course. You know? But whatever you put inside your stuffed bell pepper is what we put in this pan to make this soup. So the last thing that I added right before I ate was a little bit of mozzarella cheese. Because, of course, when you're making stuffed bell peppers, for me, I mix the mozzarella in with my filling, and then I also top it with mozzarella. So I thought I needed to put some mozzarella on my soup. So that's what I did. You're going to need, this is a very simple recipe. I had no idea that it was this easy, but when I decided that I was going to freeze without the potato soup, I called up one of my best friends, and she was nice enough to give me her recipe. And this is the recipe that all the friends want. If you don't feel good, if you're down in the dumps, if you just had a baby, or if you just want some really good potato soup, we always call her to cook for us. But now I have her recipe, y'all, so I can make my own potato soup. So let's get going and get these potatoes peeled. You're going to wash them up real good, and then we're going to cut them into chunks. Now, if you don't feel comfortable hacking away at these potatoes right there in the palm of your hand like I'm doing, then feel free to get a cutting board and cut them however you want to cut them. And this is also preference as to how big you cut your potatoes. It just depends on how big a chunks of potato you want in your soup. If you like a really smooth soup, cut them smaller so they'll cook down. If not, leave some big chunks in there and you'll have big chunks in your soup. Now, once you've gotten your potatoes cut up however you want them, we're going to go ahead and just put them in a big old pot. Whatever kind of pot you like to normally cook soup or chili or whatever in will work. Anything you've got. And we're going to go ahead and add 3 of these big containers of chicken broth to our pot. Now, if you want a lot more juice in your soup, you can always add another container of this chicken broth, but I thought that 3 was plenty. And you can see they are covered with just 2 things of the chicken broth, so if you just want to add 2, you can add 2. Just kind of watch that you don't boil too much liquid out as your potatoes are boiling. So to this, we're going to add a diced up onion, and we're going to add some garlic and onion powder, of course, because we add that to everything. But I don't know why I keep buying the small containers of these. I should just buy the big containers and get it over with. But here we are. So add your container, your entire container, not really your entire container, but just add your garlic and your onion powder. And then we're going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Now, don't add a whole lot of salt because your chicken broth has got a lot of salt in it already. And you don't want it to be too salty because you can always add more salt a little later, but you're not going to be able to take it back out if you add way too much up front. So just let it cook for a little bit and then give it a taste. And if it is not salty enough, you can add a little salt. Just kind of go with however you like it. So once we get these potatoes boiling, I kind of realized with mine, I like chunks of potato in mine, but I don't like a whole lot of chunks of potatoes in mine. So I just took my little meat masher there, my little thing I ground meat with, and I just put it in there and just kind of broke those potatoes up just a little bit. Now, if you have a certified potato masher, feel free to use that if you want to do this. But this is what I had, so that is what I used. So now at this point, we're going to go ahead and start adding our heavy whipping cream. And y'all stop laughing right now at my little baby whisk because sadly, that's the biggest whisk I have right now because my big whisk broke. So like I said, in every video, we use what we got. So we're going to use the baby whisk and we're going to burn the fingertips off, but we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. Just whisk it around real good. Make sure you get that heavy whipping cream mixed in there real well. I added about 3/4 of that container. And then once we got it all done and I let it boil for just a little bit, the juice part wasn't quite as thick as I wanted it to be. So I just mixed up a cornstarch slurry, which I just used about a tablespoon of water and about a tablespoon of cornstarch. You just mix it together until it gets smooth and then just mix that into your soup. And then I just let it cook a little bit longer, bring it back up to a boil, and that's it. It's done. Look how good this looks, y'all. And it makes so much soup. So, of course, I had to fix me a bowl because I was starving by the time I had to smell this cooking. But, I do it for y'all. I do it for y'all. I took one for the team again. It was a struggle, but I did it. So I just scooped me up a little bit of soup, and then you got to add the good stuff to it. So you're going to add some shredded cheese, and I have a really neat cheese shredder, and if you haven't seen it, it is in my chicken enchilada video. I'll link that one up above. And then we're going to add some crumbled up bacon and a few little green onions, and that's it, y'all. It is so dang good. And then look what I had left over. I had 6 of these containers, and that's about, I would say, about 2 cups of soup in each container. So now I have all that to put in the freezer for when I want soup later. Hey y'all, today we are making some chicken and bacon corn chowder. All right, to start out with, we're going to go ahead and get some potatoes peeled and cut up. Now, y'all know I say this every time because I just feel like I need to put it out there. I always peel my potatoes with a knife right in my hand. Do not do this if you're not comfortable with it. You can certainly use a potato peeler if that's what you're more comfortable with. But however you do it, get your potatoes peeled up. You're going to need about 4 medium-sized potatoes for this. I use just regular old russet potatoes. You can use whatever kind of potatoes you have in your cabinet, in your pantry, in your refrigerator, wherever you keep your potatoes. I don't know where you keep your potatoes, but just use whatever you have. Now, y'all, this recipe I got from my friend Kim over at Feathered Friends Homestead. I'm going to drop her link down in the description box. She just put this on her channel last week, and when I saw this recipe, I was like, oh my gosh, and I told her, I was like, I've got to make this. So I'm going to make it and share it with y'all, but be sure you go check out Miss Kim's channel so you can see all the other good and yummy and fun stuff that she's doing on her channel. So you're going to go ahead, like I said, and just get your potatoes all nice and cut up. Don't make them too small. You don't want them to disintegrate, but don't make them so big that they don't cook. So once you get your potatoes all peeled up, y'all, and cut up, make sure you wash them, get all that potato dirt off. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get some onion cut up. Now, I don't know what onion field these things came from, y'all, but it was the miniature field apparently. These are the smallest onions I have ever seen. Now, could I have gotten off my behind and gone in the Walmart myself? Yes, I could have, and I probably wouldn't have ended up with tiny onions, but I didn't. I was lazy. I did Walmart grocery pickup, and these are the onions that I got, so I got to use what I have, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and chop up about 3 of these. Now, I don't end up using all 3 because I did have one that was kind of a decent size, but yeah, I'm always in the kitchen cooking and I'm always needing onions. So I just put the other half in a Ziploc bag and I can throw it over in the freezer, or if I'm cooking soon enough, I'll just chunk it over in the refrigerator, and that way I don't have to cut my onion up the next time I need it. So once you get your onion all diced up, look, I got onion falling everywhere, y'all. No onion left behind. Make sure you get them all. So just go ahead, set that over to the side till we're ready for it. Now we're going to go ahead and add in about a pound of bacon. Now I had one of those, like, I don't know, the value pack or whatever, the really big pack of bacon. So I just opened it up and took about half of it out of there. And you're just going to want to cut this into bite-sized pieces, you know, because it's going in soup and we don't want a humongous piece of bacon. We want to get a little bite of bacon in everything we do. All right, now on our stove, I'm going to cut that up on high, and I'm going to go ahead and add our bacon right into my little Dutch oven. Now, I like using my Dutch oven because it holds heat good and it doesn't stick as bad as some of the other pots that I have. And we got to cook this in a lot of layers, y'all, because this is what Miss Kim did, and so that's what we're doing, because I'm telling you, hers turned out looking so good, I could smell it through the TV. So I had to make it. I had to make it. So go ahead and look, my Dutch oven ain't dirty, y'all. It's just well loved. So don't worry about that either. So go ahead and I was trying to break it up just a little, but it'll break up as it cooks. So once your bacon is about halfway done, you're going to go ahead and add in your onion. Now, like I said, I'm only using about half of what I cut up because it ended up being a pretty good bit. It was a little more than I thought. So I'm going to just save the rest for next time. So you're going to go ahead and cook this around, and don't worry about that stuff sticking down on the bottom. That's the good stuff, and we're going to get that up once we start adding liquid, so don't even worry about it. So you're just going to let those onions cook until they're starting to get a little bit see-through. Then once that happens, we're going to go ahead and add in those potatoes that we diced up and washed. Make sure you wash them, y'all. Wash the dirt off your taters. So then we're going to just stir those around until your potatoes are nice and coated in that little bacon grease that we had left, okay? So once we get all that done, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of seasoning on here. Now, I didn't start with a whole lot because you can always add to it, but you cannot take it back out. Y'all know I always say that, so just make sure that you pay attention to that, because we're going to be adding, you know, other things to this, and you don't want it to be overly salty. Okay, so then I added a little salt, pepper, a little garlic, a little onion powder. Y'all know the routine. If you've been here long enough, you know the routine. That's what we start with. That's our base right there. So go ahead and just stir those around until your seasonings get good and mixed into all the stuff you've got there in your pot. And we're going to just let those potatoes cook just a little bit till they start getting a tiny bit soft. Then I added in about a tablespoon of minced garlic, and we're going to let that cook for about 30-45 seconds, because we don't want to burn that garlic, because if you burn the garlic, everything in your soup's going to taste bitter, and we don't want to do all this work and end up with some bitter soup, right? So after we get our garlic added and all cooked in, we're going to add in a couple of tablespoons of just some regular old all-purpose flour. Now we're going to add this because this is going to help our soup to thicken up a little bit as it cooks. So, but you certainly don't have to add it if you don't want to. So let that flour cook a couple of minutes until you get that raw flour cooked out. Then you're going to add 1 can of regular corn with the juice. Leave the juice in it. Then we're going to add 1 can of cream style corn. Now I'll be honest with y'all, this is almost where Miss Kim lost me on this recipe. I have never put cream style corn in a soup like this before, but I trusted her. Hers turned out looking so good. So I said, I'm going to trust the process and I'm going to go with it. So add your regular corn and your cream style corn. Then we're going to add in 2 cans of evaporated milk. And if you don't have evaporated milk, you can substitute regular milk, half and half, maybe half heavy whipping cream, half milk. Whatever you have, it'll work just fine. Then you're going to stir that around a little bit until we get everything nice and stirred in. Look at all that good stuff in there, y'all. My gosh, my house was smelling so good by this point. I knew this was going to be good. I already knew it because it smelled so good. All right, now we're going to add in a couple of cups of liquid. Now, Miss Kim used water, but I had this chicken broth that was off of some chicken that I had cooked, and I always save my broth and I put it in the freezer. You know, saves you money and it tastes better. So this was about 2.5 cups, and I just added that right over into my pot. I figured a little chicken broth wasn't going to hurt. Look at that, y'all. But I want y'all to see, too, how thin that liquid is because it's going to thicken up, so don't let that worry you. All right, so remember that chicken I was talking about? Well, I had cooked it because I was going to make some quesadillas. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add some of this chicken into this chowder because it certainly can't hurt. So I added what was about the equivalent of 1 big chicken breast to my pot. And I had just seasoned it when I cooked it with a little salt and pepper, you know, some chicken bouillon, stuff like that. So that's all the seasoning that was on there. I had not seasoned it yet for my quesadillas. So anyway, you can use rotisserie chicken or whatever you have will work just fine, or you don't have to use it at all if you don't want to. All right, now I tasted it once it heated up a little bit, and I thought it needed a little bit more salt and pepper. So I added a little bit more salt and pepper. And I went ahead and I mixed that up. And in between when I add seasonings, I like to let it kind of come back to a boil a little bit so the seasonings can get good and mixed in. And then I'll taste it again and see if I need to add anything. Well, I decided I wanted to add some of this caramelized onion butter. Now, it's by Kinder's, y'all. You can get it right at Walmart. It's pretty inexpensive, too. It just has kind of an oniony and buttery flavor that is so good. So, but add whatever seasonings that you like, okay? Then we're going to stir that up. We're going to let it heat. You can cook it on high for 10-15 minutes, or I cut it down on low and let it cook for about 45 minutes to an hour. Just cook it until your potatoes are done and your soup has thickened up. And y'all already know I had to be a little bit extra and add me a little bit of shredded cheese and a little bit of chives right on top of mine. But y'all, I'm telling you, everybody love this. You've got to try it. It is so good. Okay, so I had somebody ask me if I could do some good but inexpensive meals. So this is the first one that I came up with. We're going to need just 3 ingredients, pretty much. We're going to need some white beans, some ground beef, and some potatoes. This is a recipe. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, y'all. And this is something that Mama would make all the time for us. And it looks kind of weird and it sounds kind of weird maybe to some people, but it's really good. And I know one place I put soup, one place I put stew. It kind of just depends on the amount of water you want to add to it. So to start off with, you're going to wash your beans, and you can use navy beans, pinto beans, you know, whatever kind of just light bean that you want to use. So I like mine more of kind of a soup consistency. So mine, this is how I do mine. Okay. So the night before, I don't soak my beans or anything. I know a lot of people do, but this is just the way that I do this recipe. Put your beans in your crock pot after you wash them real good, because you know a lot of times beans will have dirt, you know, clods or rocks and stuff like that in them. So add your, wash your beans, add them to your crock pot. Then add whatever the amount of water is that you want to use. I filled probably half the crock pot full. You don't want to do it too full because you're going to add like all those potatoes and stuff. And while some of this is going to just cook down and soak into the beans, all of it is not. So, excuse me, I just add my beans to my crock pot, fill it about halfway up with water, and then I just add a bunch of seasonings to it. I add salt, pepper, garlic, and onion. Y'all know that's kind of my go-to. And I didn't think I had any onion, but I found this little half a bag of onions in the freezer, so I went ahead and chopped those. Look, y'all, I didn't chop them onions. Went ahead and dropped those over in the crock pot. Now you're just going to stir this around real good, and then I put the lid on it, put it on low, and I let it cook overnight. I started these probably about 10 o'clock at night. So you're just going to let them cook on low all night. All right, so the next morning when you get up, you're going to cut your potatoes up. Now, I didn't do this whole 5-pound bag of potatoes, y'all. I did probably half of this bag of potatoes. So you're just going to go ahead, and this also is preference. How many people you're feeding or whatever. This is going to make a huge crock pot full of food. And like I said, somebody had asked me about doing some, low cost meals or whatever. This entire meal costed less than $10 for all the ingredients that go into it. And it will feed a big family. But somebody like me, I ate on it for a couple of days. And I also put several containers of it in the freezer because that way, if I decide I want it again, all I got to do is go in the freezer and get it out and heat it up. And I don't have to worry about going through all these steps, and cooking it all and, waiting a day and all that kind of stuff. So I make the best of what I have. I like to make things that I can freeze. And that way, I'll have it whenever I want to eat it. So you're going to just peel your potatoes up. Now, if you wanted to leave the skins on your potatoes, I guess maybe you could. If you wanted to, I never have for this particular recipe. But, do what you like. So, once you get your potatoes all peeled, you're going to wash them real good. And then we're just going to, dice them up. And this is, dice them as big as you want them. It doesn't matter how big they are. They're gonna cook because you're gonna let them cook all day long. But I don't like huge chunks of potatoes in this, particular soup / stew, whatever. So I just cut mine into, kind of reasonable size cubes. And y'all, I'm telling you, I know that this sounds weird. Like, well, I didn't even know what the name of it was, honestly. We've had this for years and years, had it a lot growing up. But I never knew really what we just called it, like the bean and potato and hamburger soup. So, but I did look it up to see if anybody else made this. And I did see that several people made variations of this. So then I didn't feel so crazy. So, all right. After you get your potatoes all, peeled, diced, all that kind of stuff, we're going to go ahead and add them to our pot. Now, you see these beans? You pretty much probably could eat them now. They are, they're tender. But you want to cook them down because, beans will start making kind of a thick, like a thick bean juice kind of thing. So it's going to thicken up this water that you have in your crock pot. So I just go ahead and add my potatoes over in there. Now, y'all make sure in the morning when you do this, taste your beans because, you have to add a lot of salt to these because it just takes a lot when you're cooking an entire pound of beans and then you added a ton of potatoes on top of it. So just make sure you season it up good. Okay, so next step, this is about 2 hours before we're ready to eat. I do the ground beef. Now, you may could do all of these steps at one time and just let it all cook together, but this is the way we always did it. This is the way Mama did it, so I'm sticking with, I'm sticking with the way Mama taught me how to do it, y'all. But you just go ahead and I season up my ground beef too. And just with the same seasonings that I put, in my beans and potatoes. So you're going to get this all browned up and then make sure you drain your grease off of it. And, ooh, sorry, y'all. I smoked y'all out. Look, I'm going to clean it up though. Look, I got y'all. Look, there we go. So you can already kind of see where that bean juice has thickened up there in the middle. You'll really see it when I stir it here. So this is, it starts to, like I said, it starts to thicken up. And again, if you don't want this much juice, if you don't want yours like a soup, if you want it more of a stew kind of consistency. Now look, there we go. We got to taste them beans again, y'all. Make sure, don't add a ton of salt at the beginning because you can't take it back out. Just along the way, taste it, and if you need more seasoning, add it. So we're going to dump our ground beef after we get it all drained up. We're going to dump that right into our pot and just stir that in with your beans and your potatoes. And like I said, I know this is kind of, which we always thought it was, normal, of course, but kind of weird too, because a lot of people that I talk to, like, they've never heard of it, and they're like, I have never eaten that. But if you like beans, you like potatoes, and you like ground beef, you're going to like this, because you're just going to season it up to whatever seasonings that you like. Look, I was smart that time. I caught that steam for it fogged y'all out. But this is when it's time to eat. See how thick that bean juice is up in there? Y'all, this is so good. It's really, really good, on a cold winter day, or just really any time of the year. And any time that you're, maybe a little low in your grocery budget or something, it doesn't cost anything. Now, I had the expensive beans only because that's what they substituted, because y'all know I'm a great value gal. But it's really, really inexpensive, and it is really, really delicious. The potatoes are just fall apart tender. You got your ground meat, so you got your whole meal right here in a bowl, and it didn't cost you hardly anything. Hey y'all, today I have got some Crockpot potato soup. So to start out with, y'all look at this fancy new knife I done got. I'm going to try my best not to chop a finger off while I'm cutting this onion up over here. But I have another potato soup video that y'all know. Well, some of y'all may know. And I did that one completely homemade. And you do it on the stove, and cook it on the stove. Real easy recipe, and it's super, super delicious. But I came across this one, and it uses frozen hash browns instead of potatoes. And I don't always have potatoes at my house, but you can just get hash browns and throw them in the freezer, and they'll just be in there for whenever. So I just thought I would share this one with y'all, and just so you'd have another option. But I'll link my original recipe or my original video down below for y'all too, so you can check that one out if you want to. But this one, I don't know if I said already, but it was a Weight Watchers recipe, a channel that I came across randomly, and if I can remember where I found it, I'll link the video down below. But it's really good, y'all. So all you're gonna do is dice you up an onion, and then you're gonna take just one bag of frozen hash browns, and I think it's a 32-ounce bag, I think, but it's just a regular size, not like a big bag. And mine was still frozen, clearly, as you can see here. And I tried chopping it up with this spoon, but it was just flinging stuff everywhere. So I just got in there with my hands, and it was super, super easy to break up. So don't try to break it up with a spoon, y'all. If yours are frozen, just go ahead and reach in there and just, crumble it up with your hands. Because like I said, see how easy it just crumbles right on up? So just, like I said, get these crumbled up the best you can. And then we're going to, look at that, a little piece of the, sometimes I have a little piece of the peel. It'd be like one or two little pieces, and it just makes the whole pot look terrible. So I just took that out. So once you get your potatoes all broke up, go ahead and just put your onion right over into your crock pot. Now, if you don't like big pieces of onion, or you don't like this much onion, you can always use a little less, or you can use onion flakes or onion powder, however you want to do it, whatever your family likes. So then I just went ahead, and the recipe, she had put in just one of these containers of chicken broth. And when I did it, I was like, that don't look like a whole lot of chicken broth to me. But I try to follow the original recipe the very first time I make something. And this was the first time I had made this. But I just couldn't, y'all. It just did not look like enough to me, because I was not thinking that those hash browns were frozen and they were going to release water as they cooked. But it don't matter, neither here nor there, right? And I ended up with a lot of juice in my potato soup. But that's okay, because I like it that way. So I ended up adding 1.5 of those 32-ounce containers of chicken broth. And then I just mixed it up real good. And then I'm going to add in 1 can of cream of chicken soup. And this is the, I think the 94% or the 98% fat-free, whatever it is. But y'all know the last time I used this, I had gotten 2 cans at the Target, and they're like darn soup. I mean, I know it's cream of chicken soup, but I mean, they usually come out in a big old solid gel plopping mess. And this was just watery, but I figured since the last can didn't kill me, this one probably wouldn't either. So I just went ahead and I went with it, y'all. Just rolled right on with it. So I went ahead and just put my can of soup right on in my crock pot and just stir that in really, really good. You want to get it, make sure everything's good and mixed up because you want all them potatoes to be able to soak up all that good flavor. Then you're going to add you a little bit of garlic powder. And I don't know how much this is. Teaspoon, tablespoon, half a cup. Y'all know. Sprinkle on some garlic powder. Then you're going to sprinkle on a little bit of onion powder. Now, if you didn't use an onion, if you didn't cut an onion up and put it in there, you might want to use just a little bit more onion powder, or like I said, you could use some onion flakes. So then I went ahead and added just a little bit of pepper. And I didn't add any salt because we had added the chicken broth and the cream of chicken soup, and I didn't want it to be too salty. So you just wait, let it cook a little while, and when you come back for the second step of this, then you can taste it. And if you need some more seasoning, then you can go ahead and add it, when you're back in your crock pot doing something. So just stir it around real good, and then we're going to put the lid on this, and we're going to let it cook. I let it cook on high for about, I don't know, maybe 2 hours. And then once your little 2 hours is up, you're going to come on back, open it up. I didn't steam y'all out, y'all. I almost did. But go ahead, just kind of mix it around and then just kind of taste it right there. Get you a little tiny spoon and taste it. And if you need to add any more seasoning, you can go ahead and add you some more in there. So once you get to this step, go ahead and add in 1/4 cup of milk. And you can use whatever kind of milk you want. I mean, if you'd rather use heavy cream or whatever you got at your house, honey, you put it right on in there. I don't know if almond milk would work because y'all know I'm an almond milk. Well, I don't drink it. I use it in stuff because, I'm lactose intolerant. I told y'all that one time. But anyway, you'd think I'd be belly up somewhere with all this cheese I use, but here I am. So anyway, use whatever milk you got and then just 1/4 cup. And then you're going to fight the cream cheese out of its package because, honey, it was fighting. You see that? But go ahead and just put in 1 block of cream cheese. And I had let this sit out on the counter, while my potatoes were cooking. So it was, kind of soft, kind of room temperature. And just go ahead and put that in your crock pot. And I'm just kind of trying to break it up a little bit. I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's all going to cook down. But I just feel like it cooks better if it's in littler pieces. And I knew with it being softened already, I wasn't going to be able to cut that anywhere. And y'all see I was digging another little piece of potato skin out of there. But anywho, just go ahead, get it mixed up the best you can. You can see the little chunks of cream cheese in there, but that's okay, y'all. They'll cook down. It'll be all right. Then you're going to put your lid back on, and I turned it on low, and I let it cook for the rest of the day. I probably let it cook another 6 hours. And then this is it. This is what it looks like when it gets done. And like I said, I added a little extra, so I have a little extra broth in mine, but I just sprinkled a little cheese and a little piece of bacon right over the top. I would have put green onions, but I didn't have any. Hey, y'all. Today we're going to make some yummy taco soup, just in time for fall. This is so delicious, and I know that you're going to love it. But what you're going to need is some taco seasoning, a can of kidney beans or any beans that you like. Black beans work good too. A can of tomato sauce, diced tomatoes, 1 can of corn, some ranch seasoning, a diced onion, and 1 pound of ground beef. And this is all you need to make this soup. So we're going to get started by browning our ground meat and our onions. And if you have a pressure cooker crock pot combo, you can always do this in one pot to save yourself some time and some dishes. This does make a big pot of soup. So if you still have all your family at home, or if you're cooking for a group, this is the perfect meal. But it's also perfect if you are an empty nester like myself and you have now started cooking for one, because you can cook this and then separate it and freeze it. And then you have a meal for even those days that you don't really feel like cooking. So I'm curious, are you guys empty nesters like myself, or are all your kids still living at home? I remember when my kids were both still at home, and meals were always a crazy time at my house because they were involved in so many activities, sports and dance and all those things that kids are involved in. And I sure do miss it these days. But I do get to make up for it because I have grandbabies now, and so I get to go to all of their activities, and that's a lot of fun as well. I really am having to rethink the way that I've always done things, especially cooking, since I'm only cooking for one most of the time now. So I thought this would be a good way to share some of my recipes, some of my favorite things with you guys, and also a way for my kids to look back on maybe some of the things they grew up eating and be able to just step by step know how to make all their favorite meals that mama used to cook when they were growing up. So once you get your onions and your meat all browned up, we're going to add those to the crock pot. Then we're going to add our diced tomatoes. We're going to add our 1 can of tomato sauce, and that is a 15-ounce can, the big can. We're going to drain our beans and add those, whichever kind of beans you chose. We're also going to drain our corn and add that. And then we're going to add our taco seasoning. And this actually it calls for 1 packet of taco seasoning, but I always buy the big containers of seasonings when I can. So I just kind of dump it in there. Over time, you just kind of figure out how much you like. And I made a mess right there. So let's clean that up a little. And then we're going to add our ranch seasoning. Also, 1 packet of that if you're buying it by the packet, or just dump a little in. I think it comes out to about 1/4 cup for a packet, roughly, I believe. I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that. And then I take my can of tomato sauce and I add some water down in there and just kind of swish it around and get all the rest of that tomato sauce out. And then it gives a little bit of juice for your soup as well. And you can just add however much you like. If you like a lot of juice in your soup, or if you don't like a lot, you don't have to add any extra water because it'll still be good. You can always keep it thick and then serve it over some chips. It's really good over Fritos. Kind of a weird spin, maybe, on a Frito pie. So once we get everything in our crock pot and mixed together, we're going to pop the lid on it. And then we're going to set the timer. My daughter got me this crock pot last year for my birthday because my old crock pot had it. So you just set your timer, and I usually start mine in the morning and cook it on low all day. If you don't have a lot of time, you can put it on high and cook it for 3 or 4 hours. It'll turn out perfect. So this is what we end up with. It is so delicious, y'all. I know that you're going to love this, and I can't wait for you to try it.